give us one example of a case where you needed to help a homeowner deal with their HOA? Any fun stories?
Oh my goodness. So I mean,
She's like, I
Just
could
one.
go all
Yeah.
day. All right, so this is episode 2 of Selling Brevard with the McKnight team, and we're going to welcome Miss Shannah Pilson. She's a lawyer here in Merritt Island.
yeah, thank you so much. It's great to be here. I've actually been working with Amanda personally to buy a house in the area, so that's how I got to know her, and it's been a great experience.
Awesome. So Christine, I know you have a lot of questions about what Shannah does, and I'll let you start it off, and then we'll just we'll interrogate her.
Yeah, like an attorney.
Yes,
Perfect.
there you go.
A
She's used to
deposition,
that.
but on the other side.
There you go.
Well, thank you for coming today. Could you tell us a little bit about your background, and maybe are you originally from Florida?
Yeah, so actually I'm originally from North Carolina. I moved to Florida after taking the bar, or graduating law school really. So I went to Elon University in North Carolina. Right after I graduated, I applied to law school and went to the University of Richmond in Virginia. I did know Virginia was not for me because it's so cold, so I moved
cold.
down to Florida, actually to the Keys. I was in Marathon, Florida for about 2 years before coming up north.
I didn't know that about you.
Yeah, so I was a public defender right out of law school. So really in the
Wow.
trenches of law down there. But it was a great experience, learning experience.
That's amazing. Did you enjoy like the boating and like what was your favorite activity to do when you were not doing the public defending?
Right. So boating and fishing is big down there, right off the ocean and on the Gulf. So
Right.
it's really perfect. Boater's dream.
Did you do some lobstering?
I did not do any lobstering.
that?
It
Okay.
seemed a little cruel, but I did go diving quite often. It's
Nice.
a really nice area for that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Just talked about your first job out of law school.
Right.
So how did you transition from criminal law, being a public defender, to doing wills and trusts? Because that's what you're doing now, correct?
Right, yeah. So I started in criminal. I always had a dream of being a criminal defense attorney because I really thought you could help people, which you absolutely can, getting them out of jail, kind of organizing where they go next. But I didn't find it as a sustainable way of helping them in their life because it was more of a Band-Aid than a fix. So I moved over into civil practice with wills and trust because that's long-term planning, what you're going to do with your life, how you can help your family, and it seemed like a better fit for me and how I think you can help people down the road.
So you seem to find more of your passion in wills and trust.
Right, so you can really delve into people's lives, you get to know the clients, what they need, and how you can help them meet their goals.
That's great.
Yeah. So what made you want to go into private practice, and why did you pick Merritt Island?
So I went into private practice because, there's really no other option when you go
Okay.
civil. You could work with the government, again, more of a civil instead of criminal, but I started at a small firm in Vero Beach, and I really learned the lay of the land as far as helping people establish their estate plans, helping people go through probate and how to figure out the next steps after a loved one passed, and kind of all the branches that go along with that as far as business transaction or HOA law and stuff of that nature. But I decided to open a firm because I moved towns, and so I moved to Merritt Island. I moved to Brevard County specifically. It's a gorgeous town. There's a lot to offer. There's tons of things to do here. There are tons of businesses and people that you can get to know and connect with. So that's why I moved here and to start a firm to kind of help the community.
And perhaps for family too?
Right. So my parents are moving up to this area. They're looking for a house as well with Amanda. So it just made sense.
Perfect.
So what does a typical day with you look like? Like what do you do at the start of the morning? Do you have a set schedule, or is it just depend on the clientele?
So it's pretty flexible. I spend a good amount of time in meetings with clients because, again, it's really a personalized experience. We need to know what your family looks like, what your plans are for them, and how we can help them as far as a will and a trust goes. Because not everyone needs the same thing. Some people, a trust is really the best option from them to avoid probate down the road or to plan for their family. Other people, they may just need a simple advance directive, so just a power of attorney, healthcare surrogate, just to kind of help get them to the next stage. specifically with older people. You know, they may need somebody to act on their behalf as far as going to the doctor or just kind of getting their day-to-day going, and a power of attorney can help them with that. So I meet with clients for a good bit of time, talking to them, making sure we know what they need, and what I can give to them. And then, of course, drafting is a pretty big part of it.
I'm sure.
You know, estate plans can be up to 50 pages. So
Yes.
there's a lot of writing involved.
Yeah, well, speaking of an estate plan, what is an estate plan exactly, and who possibly needs one?
Yeah, so an estate plan is really the typical will that you think of, you see on TV shows, where you can name who you want your beneficiaries to be. So do you want your kids to inherit after your passing? And then you name somebody to be in charge. And in Florida, we call that a personal representative. And so that would be the person that would speak to the courts if it needed to go through probate to make sure those assets properly pass to your beneficiaries.
So someone they trust.
Right, someone they trust. A lot of times it's a spouse and then perhaps kids. But of course it just depends on your family dynamic. You can name financial advisors if you're more comfortable with that.
Sure.
But yeah, it's definitely a trusted individual that you know will make sure your wishes are carried out.
Great. How long do one of these meetings go for? Like, do you typically start out with 30 minutes, an hour? How many meetings to get to? Because you said it's 50 pages. It's a lot of documentation, a lot of getting to know the client. So what are they looking at on how many times they have to meet you, just on average?
Right. So I do a free consultation, which is 30 minutes. Yeah. So
that's so amazing.
Yes.
30 minutes to an hour just to kind of get a feel of the client, their family dynamic, and what they could be looking for. And then I send a pretty comprehensive email to lay out what exactly an estate plan is and what I would suggest they do.
Okay.
So, you know, we have that initial meeting, get all the information, send a follow-up email, and a lot of times there are questions that come back and forth that we'll either talk on the phone or email. But it's a pretty simple process after that initial meeting.
Awesome. That's amazing. Now, do you recommend that people who are younger have their own estate plan?
Absolutely. So a lot of people think that estate plan, so a will or a trust, is only useful if you have a lot of assets or if you're older and kind of near, you know, a stage where you may be passing away. But that's absolutely not true. I always recommend, if you purchase a house, that you need an estate plan, or if you have a child, because you can go ahead and name a guardian in your will. So if you and your spouse pass away, you know, the child is taken care of.
If you own any asset, you should really be talking to somebody like yourself to get a will and a trust in order in case, God forbid, something happens.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Could you have a will without an estate plan?
So estate plan is kind of a legalese. Truly, it means having a will, or having a will and a trust, and power of attorney, healthcare surrogate, and a living will. So they kind of are one and the same, but it's just a little bit of legal language.
Okay. So an estate plan is a very general term maybe, and a will is part of that plan?
Right,
Got
exactly.
you. Okay.
And a lot of people do set up trusts when they do a comprehensive estate plan, because that's really one way you can avoid probate. So most assets would have to go through probate if they're titled in your individual name, which can take, 8 to 12 months. And so those assets are really held up and they can't pass to your beneficiaries for a long period of time. But we can retitle it into the name of the trust, or get a trust established and start funding that trust so that the assets are no longer in your sole name and can easily pass straight to your beneficiaries upon your passing.
Okay.
Good to know.
So we've kind of already discussed, if you have any assets, whether they're small or large, you should always have an estate plan.
Right, absolutely.
Always. Okay. What is the process for if a relative dies and they don't have anything in order? What does the process look like then, comparatively having it all written out and everybody knows exactly what you want?
So if you have a correct estate plan, you have a will and a trust, and you have everything properly titled into that trust, your successor trustee can, in essence, just step into your shoes, take the assets, divide them as you have laid out in the trust, and it's pretty simple. That can take a month, just depending on what those assets are. It's a pretty quick transfer. Now, if they pass away and they don't have an estate plan, they don't have a will, or they don't have a trust set up, likely it will trigger probate in the state of Florida. So you have to, again, go through that 8 to 12 month process before those assets can be transferred over. And in Florida, if you die without a will, it's called intestate. So, you have to disclose a lot of information to the court. They have to nominate who is going to be in charge of your estate. You no longer get to pick that. And the assets pass through Florida law instead of your wishes. So, while it's not horrible, it's avoidable, and you can make sure your assets go to who you want and you have who you want in charge.
Okay. Now, I know probate is a pretty expensive process. Now, that's probably, 2 to 3 times more expensive rather than just getting a consultation with you and, having that set up. Not only having it set up with you is going to be easier, faster for anybody who is inheriting property and assets, but it's also going to be cheaper, correct?
Exactly. I tell people that all the time. They'll have to pay a little now to get all of that set up, but you're really saving a lot of money for your beneficiaries because it's about double or triple if it has to go through probate as far as the legal fees and the fees to the court are involved. So you're saving money for your beneficiaries, really, by having it set up ahead of time.
It's so important.
When would you need to make perhaps a change to your existing estate plan? Like, let's say you set one up for me now, but we add another family member. What are some other things that would affect someone coming in to see you and updating that existing estate plan?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you have a substantial life change like the birth of a child or a grandchild and you want to make a gift or include them in your will or trust, that's the time that you would need to come in and update your document. However, they are written fairly broadly to encompass a lot of changes, specifically with Florida law. So if there is a significant change, likely the documents I would give you would sustain that change. If not, I would reach out to you. But really what you would be looking at is if you had a substantial change in circumstance to update your documents.
Say like Christine, we get our trust and will done. How often for somebody of a younger generation do you recommend they come in and just maybe have that consultation, 30 minutes with you just to check in? 5 years, 2 years?
So it really just depends. If you're of the childbearing age and you have some kids, you might want to check in because at that point, you want to name a guardian. You want to make sure that the child is cared for if you and the father or mother pass away. So I would recommend maybe yearly if you have smaller kids, but 5 years is a pretty good number if you're not having those substantial life changes.
And that would maybe just update your assets and income and everything, correct?
Yeah, so you can update them, or we could just chat about, this is who you've named in these positions. These are the beneficiaries. Are there any changes there? Do we need to look at your assets, such as, have you purchased a home? Do we need to retitle the deed to put it in your trust or anything like that, just to make sure everything is in order?
Right.
Where's the safest place to keep copies of the estate plan?
So I like to keep the original in the office. I have a fireproof, waterproof safe, so there's not going to be any issues with them. But then I generally recommend every client keep one copy and then perhaps give a copy to who you've named to be in charge after your passing. Probably 50 years ago, maybe 20 years, not even that long, they would send the original executed documents home with the clients, and then we get a call and they're like, Dad had his estate plan done with your firm 25 years ago. Where are the originals? And we're like, well, we sent them home, and he's moved a couple of times and they no longer have them. So it's really the safest bet to keep them, the originals at least, with the attorney.
Yeah.
Perfect. Are there any other areas of law that you're currently practicing or you specialize in?
Yeah, so I have a general practice. My focus is with estate planning, so wills and trust and probate, but I can handle pretty much anything that would come up with that. So if you need deeds to transfer title into the trust, I can help with that. Do business transactions. Generally, it just kind of goes hand in hand, because if you own a business, you may want to go ahead and put that in your trust, or have the documents to set it up, take it down, or to transfer ownership. And I do a little HOA and condo association law.
Oh,
great.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you would be surprised the fights that can come up between homeowners and the association.
Okay,
wow.
that's good to know.
Good to know. Yeah, for sure.
Could you give us one example of a case where you needed to help a homeowner deal with their HOA, their homeowners association or condo association? Any fun stories?
Oh my goodness. So I mean,
she's like, I could go all day.
So really it comes down to people that they're mostly annoyed by like a neighbor that's making a small violation or something of that nature. And so they just keep complaining to the HOA and they're not doing anything. They're not taking that complaint seriously. And so that's when they hire an attorney to kind of get involved. I had a client a couple of years back who actually, she had a really good case. She was in a condo association. They only allowed one dog, but she had two registered real service dogs. And the condo association was threatening to evict her because she was violating. Right. And
Isn't that borderline harassment?
Right. So it's borderline harassment. You're violating the ADA. There are all kinds of problems. She sent complete documentation that she was allowed to have these, that they were service animals, but they kept ignoring her until they got a demand letter from me. And it was like, you actually can't do this. You're violating a lot of laws. And so she was able to keep both dogs, and there haven't been any issues. So
perfect.
That's amazing. So they left her alone after your one letter.
They did. So she gave them a lot of the information, but they just basically ignored it until, a firm got involved.
Well, remember, we're just dealing with just people on these boards. They're just human beings, and so they don't know the law, and it would take an attorney to write it up and say, you can't do this. So that's wonderful.
Yeah, so it really is helping people. That's what most lawyers do, I believe, because, there are problems that individuals can't necessarily handle by themselves, or they don't have the voice or the ability to make people listen. And when an attorney steps in, you get a lot more of an alert audience. Yeah.
It's like, uh-oh. Am I in trouble?
The letterhead.
The letterhead,
Exactly.
Send you into a tizzy. Well, that is great. Is there anything else that you want to talk about?
I don't know.
No? Okay. That was
really good.
It was such good information, I think.
I'm happy to know about the condo association because we had Bill and Michelle who had a neighbor that was violating a lot of the rules, and now, if, for example, I could refer them to her.
For sure.
To at least have a consult to find out if there's anything that you could do to help them, with the association and this neighbor that actually isn't following the rules.
Right, absolutely. And that's one of the problems with HOAs is that you have, the ones that are straight-laced following all the rules, but you have, Bill down the street that just doesn't want to comply, and it takes a little bit of work to get the HOA to act on that.
Yeah.
Well, Shannah, I think that you're going to have a huge clientele here really shortly. And I mean, you're so skilled and she's so caring. So if you have any questions or you want to reach out to Shannah, you can contact me and I'll get you her direct office line, or we're going to link her website below and you can schedule a meeting.
A consult. Yeah, a meeting.
You're going to schedule a meeting with her.
Thank you so much, and thanks for having me. This has been a wonderful experience.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So educational.